So I think that the biggest thing that we have to address is what foods are addictive. And we know for sure sugar, but processed foods, I mean, they're getting more and more complex and complicated. And the marketing behind these foods, I'm not even gonna, they're not really even foods. They're artificially created products that we end up consuming. We really have to understand what is food, what is not food, go about nourishing our body in a way that is really going to feel good for us. When the brain is addicted, it's telling us all these other things about, what we should be doing, how we use food as reward or we use it as comfort or punishment. Like that addicted part of our brain can be very sneaky and convince us to do things that we really don't want to be doing.
Today, I'm excited to introduce Rachel Murray. Rachel Murray is a director at Nutrition Craft, a company transforming our perception and consumption of food. Passionate about sustainable nutrition and ethical sourcing, Rachel's key in advancing the company's mission to improve food security and quality through a farm to table approach. With vast expertise in nutrition and wellness, she leads Nutrition Craft's 4 pillars: truth, food, community, and stewardship. Her strategic vision has been crucial in developing educational courses, facilitating monthly food deliveries, and enhancing community engagement. Rachel's dedication to authenticity and informed decision making ensures that every product aligns with NutriCraft's ethos of purity and natural ingredients. She supports local farmers and promotes sustainable practices, evidence in products such as their nose to tail products. As an advocate for mental health and wellness, Rachel emphasizes nutrition's role in overall well-being. Her leadership has significantly bolstered Nutrition Craft's reputation as a trusted source of nutrient-dense, ethically sourced foods, while actively seeking partnerships to expand the company's impact. Without further ado, here's my conversation with Rachel. It is such a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me.
Of course. I was really attracted to your content. I loved all the stuff that you were talking about, conquering sugar cravings naturally, and just a lot of things regarding holistic nutrition and balancing hormones, really taking in protein, considering sleep. That really resonates with me. So I'm just eager to dive into all those things with you today. Who would you say your main clients are? Are they people who suffer with sugar addiction? Do they say they have emotional eating? Do they have food addiction? Are they binge eaters? Like, who are your clients, and what are your main ways of helping them?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of a mix who comes to me, but I think that for most of them, the foundational reason that they think they're coming to me is because they want help with weight loss. And it turns out that a lot of their struggle with weight has to do with them being addicted to certain foods or groups of foods, and namely sugar. Um, so there are quite a number of people who come to me because they understand that is the kind of the area that I'm in is really the sugar addiction. But as a nutritionist, people come to me thinking that they have this one problem, and really it's something else. So um, it is interesting to kind of see that unfold sometimes, uh, when people maybe don't understand that sugar really does have these addictive qualities to it. And in many ways that can be really freeing because they you've if anyone who's worked in the nutrition or dietitian space, you've probably had someone come to you and say, I know what I'm supposed to be eating, but I just can't. Or I'm doing all of these things that used to work for me and they're no longer working anymore. So those are, the big things that I hear all the time.
That's fascinating. The fact that, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that, a lot of women really just want to lose weight. I'm wondering if there's any challenge when you first are working with people, if they're coming to you for weight loss, and then you're identifying that there might be sort of an addiction going on. Is there, yeah, do you find that there's a struggle sometime where maybe if you're trying to work with the addiction first before the weight loss, or do you find it's pretty easy in with your clients to address them both at the same time?
We definitely do address both at the same time, but one of the big teachings that I like to offer my clients is that until we get that understanding what addiction is, how it affects our brain, we have to heal that relationship before we're going to really see sustainable weight loss, because a lot of times people come to me thinking they want a quick fix, but addiction for most of us has started in childhood, if not in infancy. I mean, we see it can start in the womb depending on what the mother's diet is, and other factors that all kind of tie in there. So it's not something that we can I mean, we can do a diet and lose weight quickly, but that's not going to be sustainable. If we want that sustainability piece, we really have to address the addiction first, but alongside. I mean, we can definitely take some actions right away if weight loss is really something that is necessary. But it does get complicated if people aren't willing and open to working on healing that addiction piece. If they're open to it, then we can definitely we take some big steps right away.
You said there's some big steps that you suggest to some of your clients right away that can help them. Do you mind sharing what some of those things are?
Yeah, sure. So I think that the biggest thing that we have to address is that what foods are addictive, and we know for sure sugar, but processed foods, I mean, they're getting more and more complex and complicated, and the marketing behind these foods, they're not really even foods. They're artificially created products that we end up consuming. We really have to understand what is food, what is not food, go about nourishing our body in a way that is really going to feel good for us. So I think that that's the biggest step. And it, like I said, it is simple. I mean, put good foods in our body, but when the brain is addicted, it's telling us all these other things about, what we should be doing, how, we use food as reward, or we use it as comfort or punishment. Like, that addicted part of our brain can be very sneaky and convince us to do things that we really don't want to be doing. So, but the big step that I'm talking about is really focusing on those nourishing foods, and those foods in particular are going to be ones that are whole and natural, that have been around for a long time. They haven't been created in a plant, and they also haven't been genetically modified, because a lot of foods that we think are natural today really aren't. Like, a lot of the plant foods are not what they were even 100 years ago or a couple hundred years ago. So what I'm getting down to is really the animal foods that are going to provide us the most nourishment that our body can accept easily. So these are bioavailable foods.
Do you have clients? So what I'm hearing is elimination of ultra processed foods, elimination of sugar. I'm hearing animal-based nutrition or an abundance of animal-based protein. Do you ever have I'm just curious, do you ever have clients that come to you that are not aware of these pillars of your approach, and maybe they fight you like, "Hey, my therapist told me that I should eat all foods in moderation, and they are encouraging me. I'm having problems with, sometimes binging on foods, but my therapist told me it's because I need to be less rigid, or I'm interested in losing weight, Rachel, but I think that vegetarian is a diet for me." How do you approach working with these clients, or is that kind of like a no-go?
I wouldn't say it's a no-go. I've had a couple of clients who do come from that stance, and I just explain to them how I work. I wouldn't say I have many clients coming to me saying that their therapist told them to do this. I guess that's just not my experience of the clientele that I attract, although I definitely hear that from other people. Yeah. Yeah, I know that those things are being said. I think that that's just not my experience of people coming to me. But yeah, the whole moderation piece, it's bananas when you're talking about addiction. Like, it doesn't work, because the addicted brain doesn't know how to moderate. Like, it's all or nothing. It is really challenging for those clients to kind of come around and understand that, because I have heard this for sure, is that I just want to be able to eat like a normal person. And I mean, who's to say what's normal? But in their mind, normal is moderating, and it's a hard truth that really, as an addict, we have to accept, that we're never going to be able to moderate those foods.
Do you personally advocate many meals a day of, little bits of protein? Do you like 3 meals a day with larger boluses of protein, or is it whatever works as long as clients get in their protein?
I feel like I used to be a lot more strict in that sense. I feel like I'm trying to be more adaptable to what works for each client. In general, for most people, eating many meals throughout the day, it doesn't set them up for great metabolic health. Like having some bigger meals less times throughout the day works best for most people. It gives our digestive system that time to actually digest the food that we've consumed, for all the hormones that need to be released to do their own jobs. So I would say for most people, spreading things out between 2 or 3 meals, maybe sometimes four, if you're an athlete and really working towards some particular goals, then that might be a better option. But snacking all throughout the day is really not what the human body is meant to do.
Can you talk a little bit about um, pillars of natural hormone balance as you see it?
So hormone balance is an interesting one because, especially for women, we hear hormone balance and we think estrogen and progesterone, but there's just so many hormones that are doing this beautiful dance in our body. And again, to get them balanced is really about taking things back to a more simpler time. So getting the sleep that we need, not being under these artificial lights and looking at screens all day long. Especially I'm up in Alberta in Canada. Our days are getting pretty short right now, but getting outside and getting some sunlight on our skin as much as possible. Even the foods that we eat are going to help regulate those hormones. So getting enough protein, especially, women underestimate how much protein they're getting. And so understanding what's going to work for your body and what you need depending on what you're trying to accomplish. I mean, we could be going through some autoimmune issues or healing from a surgery, all these different factors that tie into that. But we really need to be getting that quality protein to support not just the regulation of our hormones, but the actual production of them too. We do need those amino acids to get those hormones online. So yes, the sleep, the sunlight, the food, and then the big one that we always kind of talk about is stress, right? Like we can't necessarily control what stresses come into our lives, but we can affect or change how we react to them. So learning some coping strategies for stress that work for us, because everybody kind of has their different ones that work better for them. I mean, for some people, sitting in a yoga class is amazing. For some, that's a stressor unto its own. They can't handle that. So we really have to find what works best for us.
Absolutely. I'm on board with everything you're saying. There, all of those things make such an impact on our quality of life. And, I know for me, if I miss my morning sunshine, it just doesn't feel quite as good. And, if I'm not getting protein, I mean, that never happens because I'm very much like ketovore, so I'm always getting in a ton of protein. If I don't get sleep, the cravings ramp up or I don't feel as resilient against them. So really all these things work together to help us to maintain our our well-being and our health. You're talking a lot about protein and amino acids, mental health and physical health. I'm totally on board with that. Can you share with anyone who's listening or anyone who's watching the video ideas on how we can get, especially us as women, how do we eat that much protein? Like, what could be some meal ideas where we can eat that much protein? Let's say, individual meals, and then over the course of a day, how do we meet the protein goals that you would recommend?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, My I love eggs, so that's always my go-to. If you like eggs, if you enjoy them, if they sit well with you, then they're so versatile. So that's something that I have for breakfast in some way, shape, or form almost every day. I usually have like 3 or 4 along with something else. Um, so incorporating eggs is amazing, and I mean, you can just look at Instagram for like 5 minutes, and you'll probably find, some recipe that has either eggs as a protein or something else, but,
Mm-hmm.
that's kinda my foundation if those work for you. And then other animal-based foods. So, um, for my family, it works really well to just make big portions of things, and then you have those leftovers for the rest of the week. And I'm really fortunate in the role that I'm in. We have some really strong connections to some amazing producers that um, are doing how I describe it. They're doing the right things for the right reasons. So they're feeding their animals ancestrally appropriate food. So which really means they're not feeding them. They're letting them get their own food. So the cattle are getting their own grass, as well as bison. We have access to some amazing bison around here. Lamb, I mentioned eggs. Chicken is a little harder around here. It's easy to get, but to get it done well is difficult in Canada because it gets cold and they can't live outside year round here. We have to supplement them with some kind of food, but those hardier animals, the bison, the cows, and sheep, those kind of ruminant animals, getting your meat, your protein from them is great. So I kind of mentioned our family likes to cook up big portions, and then we just have options either in the fridge or freezer ready to go. So stews, soups this time of year. I know you're in Florida, right? So it's probably
I'm
probably
in California. I'm in a warm
okay.
weather
Okay,
California.
yeah. So not like here where we're looking for those warmer, comforting things right now.
Mm, mm-hmm.
Beyond that, basing your each meal that you have, like start with your protein. What am I gonna have as my base for my protein? And then um adding your things on top of that for flavor is where I kind of go. And for myself, a lot of that, you said you're ketovore, like I love animal fats as the flavor
Mm-hmm.
kind of enhancer,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
again, if you do okay with dairy, um, there's all kinds of great cottage cheese recipes out there, making flatbreads and things like that with just cottage cheese. There's don't have to worry about any sweeteners with those. If you do well with dairy, we have access to raw dairy here, which I know is one, it's controversial and it's also hard to get depending on where you are. So we're kind of lucky with that here. Um, so as I know that dairy isn't agreeable with everyone, but that's another great place to add on some protein.
I think I'm lucky because I really love everything protein. Like in my former lifetime, I was a bodybuilder, and so even before doing carnivore, I was already eating very high protein because I was constantly eating. I'd eat like a gazillion chickens like all the time. Like literally, I'd go to buy the chicken, and they'd be like, well, I mean, buy the chicken like at like the Whole Foods deli counter, and I'd say, oh, I want like 5 pounds of chicken, and they're like, you're gonna have a barbecue or something. I'm like, I'm literally eating this like in the next few days, just me. But then after transitioning out of bodybuilding and then doing carnivore, I've lost my taste for chicken, and I'm obsessed with like steak and beef. And so I just eat a lot of steak and beef. And to me, it never gets old. I also enjoy eggs. But for me, I just find it really enjoyable to just eat a bunch of steak, and I don't pay attention to like the norms of like what a breakfast should be. Like a breakfast should be like a croissant or something like. So I'm just like, who says you can't eat steak for breakfast? So I just eat like a lot of meat all the time. And but that's just me. But I break up, whether it's fish or eggs, ground beef, um, sardines, all that stuff. Um, and I tend to get a lot of protein, but I know a lot of people struggle. Like they just, I don't know, either they don't like it or they don't know how much they need, or they're just like scratching their head, like, What has protein in it, you know?
Yeah, and I think you make a good point there. Breakfast doesn't have to be what we're told breakfast foods are, like it and once you start feeding your body with the foods that are actually nourishing it, not feeding your body with the foods that it's craving, like the processed foods that have been designed for our body to crave. Once you start getting those actual truly nourishing foods in our body, then our body's like, oh, that this is what I need. And sure, maybe it's not a great term to use for it, but sure, we can say our body's craving that whole food. Realistically, it's no, that's what our body knows it needs. It's very smart once we start feeding it the right information through the right food. You know, people just are so confused about how much to eat, like how often to eat it, and when we start nourishing our bodies with those nutrient dense foods, our body's then able to come online and it knows what it needs. And I'm not saying like that's going to happen overnight. It does take some time to reset because again, like I said, this addiction likely started in childhood, if not earlier. It is going to take some time. So sure, like I'm happy to work with clients and let them um, or guide them in understanding like, okay, this is an appropriate amount for you to have at this meal and this meal. And I often say like, let's aim for 30 grams at each meal, but for many people that's not going to be enough. But I think that that's a great starting point because most people aren't hitting that, and if we go much higher than that, then that can be scary and challenging to kind of get there. Um, and one great way that we can do that is to couple some proteins together. If you're not someone who just wants to have a big steak for breakfast, then we can have some eggs and we can have some cottage cheese and maybe some bacon on the side, to get check off that 30 grams.
You mentioned earlier when you were explaining about the access to food that you have, you said something like, in my role, I'm really lucky because I have access to this good food. Can you tell us about the role? Tell us about this role that you have.
Yeah. So this past year, I've taken on the role of director of a company called Nutrition Craft, which is under the umbrella of a larger company called Lifecraft. And Lifecraft was really founded on the belief that human beings are beings of purpose, and that for them to be able to have like a meaningful, fulfilling, abundant life, we need to be able to access our own gifts. And the founder of Lifecraft, he does a lot of clinical hypnotherapy and other therapies to help people who are struggling to really understand their purpose. And through this, he discovered that if people don't have their nutrition dialed in, then there really is this ceiling for them to be able to realize what that purpose and their gift in life is. So that is where he founded this nutrition craft piece of the company. So I've taken on the director role of that, and with that, we provide monthly subscription. Started out as meat boxes, but we have expanded to include some other things. So we have those meats that I talked about before: the bison, beef. We've got lamb, pork, but this is a forest grazed pork, so it's not your typical pork. It's they're allowed to roam free, and they eat the food that they're meant to be eating. So it's a really nice healthy pork. We also do some freeze dried fruits, and we do freeze dried all kinds of freeze dried meals as well. So the fruits is a piece for someone who's really trying to heal and work on their sugar addiction. That might not be a piece that I really direct them towards, but it is a natural food that our body understands and digests easily. So at Nutrition Craft, for someone who's really just looking to dial in like an ancestral diet, we do like that option. So yeah, we're all about connecting those farmers and producers to the community through these monthly food boxes, and we're really operating at like a zero profit margin. We're not making a lot of money off these boxes. It's really just to connect people to good food, because we see what can happen when that happens, and it's just a beautiful thing to connect those producers who are doing things, like I said, doing them the right way for the right reasons, and getting that delicious food into the hands of the people that are looking for it. It's a beautiful thing. So that's part of the role. I do offer coaching, like nutrition coaching, as part of that as well, and we're looking at developing some different courses for those people who want more information about ancestral health. People can make custom orders as well, and we love our monthly subscription boxes, because we get to curate them and just offer people things that they might not have necessarily tried before. But if people want to make custom orders, we obviously do that as well.
That's amazing. I think that there's so much opportunity to offer high quality meats because you go to the store and it's maybe not the best. So that sounds like really rewarding. It sounds really rewarding that you've had this background in nutrition and you really care about food quality, and now you're director of this role, being able to connect people who really care about the quality of their products with a market. So that's so wonderful.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Do you ship? Does NutriCraft ship just in Canada, or does it ship to the United States as well, or is that in the future?
Right. Yeah. I'm hoping right now we're just in Canada, and with all our freeze dried goods, like we can freeze dry pretty much anything. Like we've even freeze dried like backcountry meals. So that includes our meats, for those people who are, hunting, camping. I'm close to the mountains, so there's lots of people that are doing like multi-day climbs. So those foods are great for them. So all those freeze dried products we do ship Canada wide. We'd like to get into the US market as well. Obviously, our fresh foods can really only be delivered like within a few hours, because the shipping does become a little bit of a complication there if it's not getting to you in time. So, yeah.
Understandably. Rachel, so how does ancestral nutrition support working with cravings naturally?
I think we touched on this a little bit before when I was talking about how your body is going to start looking for those foods that are nutrient dense, that your body really understands and knows how to digest efficiently. And once we start getting those foods in our body, and for someone who is struggling with addiction to sugar, that transition is going to take some willpower. And I know in the sugar addiction community, sometimes people don't like to talk about willpower, or they like to say that it's not about willpower. But in the beginning, we do need to have a little bit of that, but we can't sustain ourselves on willpower alone. We do need to bring in some other tools. But if we make this goal, if this is something that we're interested in really changing in our lives, using that willpower to set yourself up with this plan to include those nutrient dense animal foods in particular, because those are where we're going to get one, the biggest bang for our buck in terms of nutrients versus calories, because like we talked about earlier, a lot of people are coming into this looking for weight loss. So we're going to get satiating foods that also have all the micronutrients, so the vitamins and minerals that we need. And those micronutrients are going to be the things that are going to help with our cravings on top of that protein piece. Because particularly for women, and this is a really important one that I don't think a lot of women understand, is that fasting can be a big stressor for our bodies, for anyone, but particularly women. We need to understand that fasting needs to be done intentionally, and it does add a stressor to our life. So if we're already dealing with lack of sleep, a busy family, like a hectic job, then adding fasting to that, it can be more detrimental. Um, and in particular, the time of day that we're going to fast. So where I'm kind of going with that is we want to make sure that we're getting that protein first thing in the morning. If we are going to fast, then it's better for most women. I'm not going to say everybody, but for most women to do that later in the day and, have a longer stretch between, the evening and the morning time rather than stretching your fast until lunchtime. So I know I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole with this, but the point being is like getting that protein in first thing in the morning is really going to set us up to decrease those cravings later in the day, because when we feed ourselves protein first thing in the morning, it sends a signal to our body, oh, okay, we can relax, we don't need to stress out, we have the food that we need for today. We're not in a famine, because when historically, if there was a famine or we hadn't hunted in a few days and we didn't have something that morning, then the body's going to go into preservation mode where it's going to hold on to body fat and release these stress hormones so that we're motivated to go out and get food, and that we are storing what we need on our body, enable us to actually catch our food. So again, getting that protein in the morning is going to lower all those stress signals so that we're not set up for more cravings later in the day. So it's going to kind of just mellow everything out. And then, of course, we want to continue to nourish at the next meal, and that's going to help with cravings, because most of the clientele, and I'm sure people that you've spoken with, their cravings are like afternoon, evening, after the kids go to bed. That's the biggest time that they're struggling. So if we can set ourselves up for it, by getting that good protein bolus first thing in the morning, then that it just goes a long way to help with the cravings, um, later later on, and of course that being like a high quality, animal based protein.
Absolutely. Your Instagram has a lot of inspiration, I think. I saw a meal that you posted on there. It was like, had a fish roe,
Mm.
flying fish roe on it, I believe it was. And it had some eggs and sardines and other things that I would consider very tasty. So I encourage everyone to check out your Instagram for some ideas just on everything. You have a whole bunch of great information about all the pillars of your approach. Besides your Instagram, if people want to follow you, know about your work, what you're doing, if they want to find out about NutriCraft, what is the best way for them to find all this information?
Sure, yeah. So I have my personal Instagram account. I'm sure you'll post it, but it's Rachel Murray Holistic Nutrition. And then Nutrition Craft also, we have a separate Instagram for them for that. So it's Nutrition Craft. You can find us fairly easily there. If they want to email me, it's Rachel at lifecraft.me .me. So that's probably the easiest way to get in touch with me. You can either hit up my website, which again is it's a long name, but everything's all the same. It's Rachel Murray Holistic Nutrition, and then Nutrition Craft. So we've kind of kept it pretty consistent across the board there. So yeah.
Perfect. And we'll include all of that in the show notes so they can see it. Thank you so much, Rachel, for coming on the show and for blessing us with your perspectives and your knowledge. It's been so great. So thank you so much.
Yeah. Thanks so much for having me.